When I was 10, my world collapsed in a way that still rattles me. My dad didn't pass away in some quiet hospital bed or after a long illness. He was gone in an instant, one day laughing while grilling chicken in the backyard, the next just gone. No warning, no final words. Just this aching silence that settled over everything like dust after a demolition. The worst part? I wasn't the only one shattered by it. My mom, Diane, crumbled. I remember watching her stare into her mug for hours, coffee going cold while her eyes welled with a pain I couldn't understand at the time. She was barely 36. Suddenly widowed, overwhelmed, and haunted by memories she didn't want to relive. Then one morning, she sat us down, me and my younger sister, Hallie, and told us she was leaving. Just for a little while, she said. I need to go back to Ireland. To clear my head. I can't be here, not with everything reminding me of him. She said she'd come back. Promised, actually. She never did. Instead, we were taken in by the Myers, family friends who did everything they could to make us feel safe. Mitch and Carolyn Meyer tried to recreate birthdays, decorate for the holidays, even kept bowls of Lucky Charms stocked like my dad used to. But it never felt like home. Not really. It was too quiet. Too tidy. Too, not us. I used to lie in bed at night, trying to remember what Dad's voice sounded like. And then came the guilt. Had I been too much of a handful? Too loud? Too much like Dad, as Mom used to say with a tired smile? Would she have stayed if I hadn't reminded her so much of him? Carolyn would come sit beside me when the sobs got too loud. She'd run her fingers through my hair and tell me everything would be okay. But it never quite was. When I became a father myself, I promised I'd never make my kids feel what I felt, that hollowness of being left behind. I became a presence. Overbearing sometimes. Always there. Always showing up. Because I knew what it was like to be the kid staring out the window, waiting for a mother who never came back. And then I met Naomi. We were 21, both bored to tears in a macro-econ class in Chicago. She had this way of scribbling notes in loops and swirls, and I thought, that's the most interesting thing I've seen all week. We started with study groups, graduated to late-night coffee runs, and by Christmas break, I was already picturing her in my future. When I finally opened up about my past, it was during a picnic in Lincoln Park, sky glowing orange, kids laughing in the distance, the kind of perfect summer night that makes you nostalgic while you're still in it. I told her about my dad. About my mom leaving. About the years I spent trying not to hate her for it. Naomi didn't flinch. She didn't try to make it better or tell me I should forgive. She just held my hand and told me about her own childhood, how her extended family had practically evaporated after her dad died, how her mom raised her alone in a house where silence was the only constant. That was the moment I knew, this woman didn't just love me. She got me. We got married 3 years later. We now have 2 kids, Maddie and Cole, and a life I'm endlessly grateful for. But there's always been this silent detour in our journey, my mom. She's still in Ireland. She visits twice a year, calls monthly. And Naomi? She's polite. Supportive even. But there's a distance. Not cold, just guarded. She sends gifts, reminds me to call on birthdays. But when we all sit down at the same table, Naomi's eyes stay slightly cautious. There's an invisible line she refuses to cross. I used to tell her. She was grieving. She didn't know what to do. And Naomi would just nod. But I could feel it, the part of her that couldn't forgive a mother for leaving her kids, no matter the reason. Then came last month's trip. I took the kids back to visit Mom. Naomi stayed behind. Corporate law doesn't pause for reunions. She encouraged me to go, even helped pack the kids' suitcases. But I saw the relief on her face. The tension she wouldn't have to carry this time. The visit started off well. Mom took the kids everywhere. Museums, castles, ice cream shops. She was doting, warm. Almost like the mother I remembered. But then came the night that cracked it all open. I was walking downstairs after tucking the kids in when I heard my aunt's voice from the kitchen. She thinks she's better than us, Aunt May said. Then my mom. Don't say it to his face. She's a snob, but it's not worth the drama. My chest went hollow. Naomi, who had never once been rude, who always showed up even when it was hard, was being mocked by the woman who once left me behind with nothing but a promise she didn't keep. And that was just the beginning. I stood frozen on the staircase, one foot hovering above the next step like I'd forgotten how to move. My mom's voice echoed in my ears, brittle and low but sharp enough to cut. She's a snob, but it's not worth the drama. For a moment, I honestly wondered if I'd imagined it. Maybe I'd misheard. But then Aunt May laughed, a dry, conspiratorial chuckle that told me everything I needed to know. They didn't respect Naomi. They tolerated her. And they did it with the same performative grace my mom used when she left us behind. Polite enough on the surface to seem harmless, cold enough underneath to burn. I walked into the kitchen. They both looked up, Mom first, her smile faltering, then May, who didn't even bother to hide her annoyance. I heard what you said, I said flatly, looking directly at my mother. Her wine glass shook slightly as she set it down. Honey, it wasn't meant for me to hear? I interrupted. But you said it anyway. Aunt May smirked. Oh, come on, Jack. Don't be so sensitive. She barely talks to us when she's here. Doesn't that tell you something? Yes, I replied. It tells me she's careful. Because she knows she's walking into a minefield every time she visits. Mom tried to defuse it. You know, May, she gets a little dramatic. I'm sure Naomi doesn't mean to come off that way. Don't do that, I said. Don't minimize what I just heard. Naomi's done nothing but try with this family. You think she's standoffish? She's trying not to offend you. She's worried she'll say the wrong thing. That she'll get judged for how she dresses, how she talks, where she comes from. May rolled her eyes. Well, she does carry herself like she's above all this. Above what, exactly? The modest house? The worn-out furniture? The wine that came from a gas station shelf? Maybe. But never in words. Never in tone. Only in their own insecurities. Mom didn't say anything. She just looked down, silent. That same silence she gave me when she packed her suitcase and promised she'd be back. Naomi isn't perfect, I said, softer this time. But she's good. And she's kind. And she's never once said a bad word about either of you, even when she had reason to. May scoffed. So you're saying we're the problem? No, I said. I'm saying you don't get to insult my wife and expect me to act like nothing happened. Mom looked up at me then, and for a brief second I saw it, the shame. The same look she used to wear when she missed my birthday for the third year in a row. She wasn't there for you, Jack, May said, stepping into the space between us. You're still holding that against her, and now you're letting your wife do the same. That was it. That was the moment I snapped. She wasn't there, I said, my voice barely holding together. And you know what? Naomi does resent that. Because she sees what it did to me. She sees what I've spent my whole life trying to pretend didn't matter. But it does matter. And she's not wrong for feeling that way. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out of the kitchen, past the picture frames filled with old smiles that now looked like staged lies. Upstairs, the kids were still asleep, blissfully unaware. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and texted Naomi, "We're coming home early. I'll explain when I get back. Everyone's okay. Just need to go." She responded immediately, "Okay. Whatever you need. I'm here." That message hit harder than anything my mom had said. It reminded me who I was building my life with, and who I was no longer willing to keep chasing approval from. I stayed one more night. Barely slept. Every sound in the house seemed exaggerated: creaking floors, dripping pipes, forced laughter. I packed early, loaded the kids into the car, and told Mom we had to leave ahead of schedule. Her face fell. "Will I see the kids again soon?" I looked her in the eye. "That depends on how you treat their mother." She didn't argue. Just nodded and stepped back. Like she always did. Driving away, my son asked if we could stop for ice cream. I smiled in the rearview mirror. Absolutely. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not anymore. The silence in the car was filled with everything I didn't say. The kids were chattering in the back seat, oblivious, passing their travel snacks and pointing out sheep on the hillsides like we were just on some normal family road trip. But my hands were clenched around the wheel. Every bump in the road felt like it echoed inside my ribs. I kept hearing my mom's voice, flat, casual, like she was commenting on the weather. She's a snob, but it's not worth the argument. As if my wife was just some ungrateful guest who brought her own weather to the family table. We got back to our Airbnb that evening, and after the kids fell asleep, I stepped outside to call Naomi. The wind was sharp off the coast, but I needed the cold to stay grounded. When she picked up, she didn't ask questions. She just said, "Hey, love." And that broke me. I told her everything, the overheard conversation, the confrontation, the silence that followed. I expected her to be angry. Instead, she just listened. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I know this is painful. But I'm proud of you for not letting it slide." The next morning, while Aunt May was out and the house was relatively still, I asked Mom if we could talk. She offered me tea. I declined. We sat in the living room, the same room where my dad used to do crossword puzzles in the evenings. The same spot where, at age 9, I curled up next to Mom when she told us she'd be gone. Just for a while. She sat across from me, her hands folded tightly like she was bracing for impact. "I know you're upset," she began, already on the defense. "No," I cut in. "I'm not upset. I'm disappointed. You said Naomi was family? You've told me that every visit. But I heard how you speak about her when you think I'm not around." She didn't deny it. She just stared down at her lap. "She's not trying to be better than you, Mom. She's just trying to be okay. And you've made that impossible. I never wanted to make her feel unwelcome," she said quietly. "But you did." "Repeatedly," I said. "She's spent years trying to fit into this family, and all she's gotten is polite avoidance and backhanded comments." "I never meant," she started. I leaned forward. "You left when I needed you. Naomi has never left. Not once. And if you're going to make her the enemy in your own head, then maybe it's not her you're angry with. Maybe it's yourself." That landed. Her face cracked. "Not all the way. Just a small fracture. But enough." "I didn't know how to stay," she said finally. "After your father died. I couldn't breathe in that house. Everything reminded me of him. I was drowning." "I know," I said. "But I was drowning too. And you swam away." Her voice trembled. "I thought if I stayed, I'd fall apart." "And you did," I said. "But so did we." For the first time in years, I saw her not as my mother, but as a woman trying to survive grief. But sympathy and forgiveness are not the same thing. She made choices. And those choices shaped me. "I'm not asking for an apology," I said. "But I am asking for respect. And not just for me, but for Naomi. For our kids." She nodded, slowly. "I'll talk to May." "I'm not asking you to talk to her," I said. "I'm asking you to stop letting her speak for you. If you're uncomfortable, say that. But don't pretend this is all one big misunderstanding." Her shoulders sagged like the weight of the last 2 decades had finally settled into her bones. "You're right," she whispered. I stood up. "We're flying home tomorrow." She blinked. "Tomorrow?" "I need space," I said. "For me, for Naomi, and for the kids. I don't want them growing up thinking this kind of disrespect is normal. I've spent too long defending people who refuse to defend me." She didn't argue. Just sat there, the way she did all those years ago, staring into her tea like the answers were at the bottom of the mug. I went upstairs and booked the flights. I didn't feel triumphant. Just tired. Later that night, as I tucked the kids in, my daughter asked, "Are we going to see Grandma again soon?" I paused. "I hope so," I said. But only if everyone's kind. She nodded, satisfied with that answer. I wasn't sure if I was. When we stepped through the door of our home, the air felt different. Not just because we were back in familiar walls, but because everything we'd left behind still clung to me like smoke. I hadn't even unpacked the suitcases when Naomi walked into the kitchen and wrapped her arms around me from behind. She didn't say anything at first. Just held me. I wanted to stay in that silence, to pretend it was enough. But the truth always leaks in. I told her we won't be coming back until things change, I said quietly. Naomi nodded into my shoulder. I figured. I turned around. Does it help? She looked up at me, eyes soft but tired. It helps that you stood up. That you chose us. We stayed like that for a while, listening to the hum of the fridge, the wind tapping lightly against the window. Then she pulled away and reached into the drawer where we keep things we're not ready to throw away, old bills, scribbled recipes, unopened letters. She took out a card. It was unopened, sealed in a pale blue envelope. I recognized my mom's handwriting on the front. My heart started to sink. She mailed it last year, Naomi said. To me. I stared at her. You never told me. I didn't want to make things worse, she said. But after everything that happened over there, you should probably read it. I opened it carefully, almost mechanically. It wasn't long. A few lines written in stiff, stilted words. Naomi, I know we've had our differences. I'm trying to be better, but it's hard when you've never truly let me in. Maybe someday we can talk about it. Or maybe not. But you don't have to keep pretending. I see the way you look at me. You think I abandoned Jack, and you probably think I'll never be enough to make up for that. Maybe you're right. But I still want to be a part of your lives. Even if you hate me for it. I folded the card and set it down. Why didn't you show me this before? I asked. Naomi leaned against the counter. Because it felt like bait. Like she wanted me to be the one to fix it. And I wasn't ready to carry that for her. She looked at me then, really looked. But more than that, I was scared you'd take her side. That you'd think I was making things harder when I was just trying to protect myself. It landed like a weight in my gut. Not because she was wrong, but because she had every reason to fear that. I've been so busy defending her, I said slowly. I didn't realize I was asking you to take hits she never apologized for. Naomi's face softened. Jack, I don't hate your mom. But I've spent our whole marriage feeling like I had to perform forgiveness just to keep the peace. And I can't do that anymore. I nodded. You don't have to. We stood in the quiet of that admission, both of us aware that something had shifted, not between us, but inside of me. Because for the first time, I understood what Naomi had been carrying. It wasn't about resentment. It was about survival. Later that night, after the kids went to bed, I sat down in my office and opened an old folder, one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were photos. Of my dad smiling in the backyard. Of my mom, holding me as a baby. Of birthdays, laughter, a world that disappeared the moment he did. I stared at one photo for a long time, me at 11, arms crossed, face too serious for a child. The first summer without her. And then I realized something. I'd spent my life trying to rebuild that broken family picture. Trying to force it back into place. But in doing that, I'd overlooked the one family I had built, the one Naomi and I had created together. I closed the folder and slid it back into the drawer. It was time to stop asking for closure from a past that was never going to give it. 3 weeks after we got back, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She tried again 2 days later, this time, a text. I miss the kids. Can we talk? I stared at the message longer than I should have. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't even manipulative. It was just soft. Familiar. Like the voice of someone who had left a long time ago, but still wanted credit for being present. I didn't answer. Because here's the thing, love without accountability is just sentiment. And I was done letting sentiment define my boundaries. Naomi and I had been doing better than ever. There was a lightness between us again. No silent resentments tucked beneath smiles, no cautious avoidance of the word Mom. We were aligned now. Finally. But then, something unexpected happened. My sister Hallie called. She never calls. Hey, she said. Mom's planning a visit. She wants to see the kids. She's talking about staying here for a week and then maybe coming by your place. I felt my jaw clench. She didn't mention that. She says you're icing her out. I let out a bitter laugh. I asked her to stop talking about Naomi behind her back, and she couldn't even do that. Hallie was quiet for a moment. Then, she's trying. She really is. No, I said. She's trying to get access to the life she wasn't there to build. That's not the same thing. There was another long pause. I just think she wants to be better. I don't need her to be better, I replied. I need her to be honest. And if she can't even own what she said, she doesn't get to skip to the grandparent chapter like everything in between didn't happen. I could tell Hallie wanted to argue. But she didn't. She just said, okay, and hung up. The next morning, my mom showed up at our door. I hadn't told Naomi she was coming. She was upstairs helping Maddie get dressed when I opened the door and found her standing there with a suitcase and a tremble in her smile. I thought we could talk, she said. No, I said simply. Not like this. She looked taken aback. I just want to see my grandchildren. They're not ready to see you, I said. Because you haven't shown them that their mother is safe in this family. And until you do that, you're not welcome here. Her face fell. I didn't realize it was that serious. That's the problem, I said. You never do. She didn't argue. Didn't shout. Just stood there, suitcase in hand, like she didn't know what to do without a script to follow. I'll go, she finally said. But I hope you'll change your mind. I won't, I said. Not until you change yours. She turned and walked down the steps, one at a time. And I shut the door behind her with a quiet finality that didn't feel like closure. It felt like the beginning of something better. That night, Naomi and I sat on the couch, kids asleep, fireplace crackling. I told her everything. She showed up? She asked, surprised. I nodded. I didn't let her in. Naomi leaned her head against my shoulder. Thank you. And just like that, it was done. Not because everything was resolved, but because for the first time, I had chosen my real family, out loud, with action, without apology. I didn't chase reconciliation. I protected peace. I've since spoken to Hallie again. She says Mom is confused. Hurt. Trying to understand. Maybe she is. Maybe she never will. But I've let go of needing her to. I'm teaching my kids what I wish I'd learned earlier. Family is not who shows up when it's convenient. It's who protects your dignity when it's hard. It's who sees you completely and chooses to stay. And that's what Naomi and I are building. Brick by brick. Moment by moment. Without compromise.